The notification sound from my phone cut through the silence of my home office like a blade. I glanced at the screen, expecting another client email or maybe a text from Ryan about his late night at the real estate office. Instead, I found a message from an unknown number that made my blood run cold. "He's mine now. Ryan chose me. Stop pretending your marriage matters." The audacity of it hit me like a physical blow, but what came next was even worse. A photo of Ryan kissing a woman I didn't recognize, taken in what looked like our favorite restaurant downtown. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen, not from heartbreak but from something far more dangerous. This woman had no idea who she was dealing with. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I set my phone down carefully on my desk and leaned back in my chair, processing what I'd just seen. The woman in the photo was young, maybe mid-20s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of confident smile that suggested she thought she'd won something precious. She was beautiful in that polished, Instagram-ready way that seemed to be the standard for women who pursued married men these days. What she didn't know was that Ryan Cooper hadn't chosen anything. He'd simply been chosen by someone who understood exactly how to manipulate a man's midlife insecurities. I opened my laptop and pulled up the security system for our lakefront house in West Lake Hills. The cameras I'd had installed 6 months ago weren't just for home security, though that's what I'd told Ryan when he questioned the expense. As the owner of Martinez Digital Marketing, one of Austin's fastest-growing agencies, I understood the value of information. I also understood that successful people often became targets, and I'd learned to protect what was mine long before I met Ryan Cooper. The camera feeds showed our empty house, Ryan's BMW missing from the driveway where it should have been if he was really working late as he'd claimed. I scrolled through the day's footage, watching myself leave for the office that morning while Ryan lingered in the kitchen, checking his phone with the kind of secretive smile I'd started noticing more frequently. There was a text conversation happening that he clearly didn't want me to see, fingers moving quickly across the screen before he deleted whatever evidence had been there. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "I know you saw the photo. Ryan told me all about your cold marriage. How you care more about your little business than him. He deserves someone who appreciates what an amazing man he is." The psychological manipulation was almost textbook perfect. Paint the wife as the villain. Position herself as the savior. Make the man feel justified in his betrayal. I had to admire the strategy, even as I planned to destroy it completely. I'd built my agency from nothing after college, starting with small local businesses and gradually working my way up to representing luxury brands and tech startups. The work required understanding human psychology, knowing how to craft messages that would resonate with specific audiences, and most importantly, how to research thoroughly before making any move. These skills had served me well in business, and they were about to serve me even better in my personal life. Opening a new browser window, I began my investigation. A reverse image search on the photo led me to several social media profiles. Ashley Chen, 28 years old, interior designer specializing in high-end residential properties. Her Instagram was filled with photos of expensive homes, designer furniture, and herself posed artfully in various luxury settings. She'd been tagged at Austin Country Club multiple times, always dressed impeccably, always with different wealthy-looking men. This wasn't her first time targeting someone else's husband. I dug deeper, using the professional research tools my agency subscribed to for client background checks. Ashley's business was struggling, despite the polished online presence. She'd defaulted on 2 credit cards in the past year, had been evicted from her previous apartment for non-payment, and was currently living in a downtown condo that was far beyond her apparent means. The Range Rover Evoque in her photos was financed at an interest rate that suggested poor credit, and the designer clothes seemed to come from rental services rather than retail purchases. This was a woman living a fantasy lifestyle, desperately trying to maintain an image she couldn't afford. Ryan, with his successful real estate career and our comfortable life, must have seemed like the perfect solution to her financial problems. What Ashley didn't realize was that Ryan's success was built almost entirely on the foundation I'd provided. When we'd met 5 years ago, Ryan was a struggling agent at a mid-tier firm, driving a 10-year-old Honda and living in a one-bedroom apartment near the airport. I'd been attracted to his ambition and charm, the way he talked about his dreams of selling luxury properties and building a real estate empire. I'd used my business connections to help him secure clients, recommended him to successful entrepreneurs in my network, and even co-signed the lease on his BMW when his credit wasn't quite strong enough. The lakefront house was mine, purchased with proceeds from selling my agency's first major contract to a Fortune 500 company. Ryan's name wasn't on the deed, though he'd somehow convinced himself over the years that our home was a joint investment. The mortgage had been paid off entirely 2 years ago, using a bonus from landing 3 tech startup clients in a single quarter. Ryan knew about the payoff but had never asked to see the paperwork, never questioned why the monthly payments had suddenly stopped. My phone rang, interrupting my research. Ryan's name appeared on the screen, along with a photo from our wedding day 5 years ago. We'd been married at Laguna Gloria, the art museum overlooking Lake Austin, with 200 guests and a reception that had cost more than most people's annual salaries. I'd paid for everything, wanting to give Ryan the wedding of his dreams, since he'd mentioned how important it was to him to make a good impression on his colleagues and clients. "Hey babe," Ryan's voice was artificially casual, the tone he used when he was lying about something. "Just wanted to let you know I'll be really late tonight. We're showing the Pemberton estate to some California investors, and they want to see everything twice." "Of course," I replied, keeping my voice warm and understanding. "Don't worry about dinner. I'll probably work late too. We just landed a new client, and I want to get their campaign strategy outlined tonight." "That's great, Jess. You work too hard, though. You should take some time for yourself." The irony of his concern wasn't lost on me, considering where he actually was at that moment. "I will, once this project is finished. Love you." "Love you too." The lie came so easily to him that I wondered how long this had been going on. Not just the affair, but the casual deception, the comfortable dishonesty that had apparently become second nature. I thought about all the late nights, weekend showings, and business dinners that had kept him away from home in recent months. How many of those had been real, and how many had been cover stories for time spent with Ashley Chen? I pulled up Ryan's credit card statements, accessible through our shared financial management app. The account was technically his, but since I'd co-signed when his credit was poor, I maintained access for our joint budget planning. The recent charges told a story that Ryan had thought was hidden. Dinner at Uchi, Austin's most expensive sushi restaurant, on a night he'd claimed to be showing property to out-of-town clients. Flowers from a boutique florist downtown, purchased on my birthday but apparently not delivered to me. A weekend stay at La Cantera Resort in San Antonio, charged during a supposed real estate conference that I now realized had been entirely fictional. The paper trail was extensive and damning. Ryan had been systematically lying to me for at least 4 months, using our shared resources to finance his affair, while maintaining the pretense of a loving marriage. The betrayal was comprehensive, involving not just emotional infidelity but financial deception and elaborate fictional narratives about his professional activities. I opened a secure messaging app that my IT team used for sensitive client communications and sent a message to Elena Rodriguez, my assistant who handled both personal and professional scheduling. "Need you to clear my calendar for tomorrow afternoon. Family emergency situation that requires immediate attention." Elena's response came within minutes, professional and efficient as always. "Of course, Jessica. I'll reschedule the Henderson meeting and push back the campaign review. Do you need anything else?" I considered my options carefully. Ashley Chen clearly thought she'd won some kind of prize, successfully stealing another woman's husband and claiming victory in a competition I hadn't even known I was part of. Her text messages revealed a woman who was confident in her position, secure in the belief that Ryan had chosen her over his wife, convinced that their relationship was somehow superior to our marriage. She was about to learn that assumptions could be dangerous, especially when they involved underestimating someone whose professional life depended on strategic thinking and thorough preparation. I'd built my business by understanding markets, identifying opportunities, and executing plans with precision. Ashley Chen had positioned herself as a competitor in a market she didn't understand, against an opponent whose capabilities she'd completely misjudged. My phone buzzed with another message from Ashley's number. "I know this must be hard for you, but Ryan and I are in love. Real love. not the business partnership you two have. He told me how you never make time for him, how you're always working or traveling for your company. I give him what he needs. The psychological manipulation continued, designed to make me feel guilty for my professional success, to frame my achievements as failures as a wife. It was a common tactic used by women who pursued married men, turning the wife's strengths into perceived weaknesses, rewriting the narrative to justify their interference in someone else's relationship. Ashley had convinced herself that she was somehow saving Ryan from an unhappy marriage, that her arrival in his life was a rescue mission, rather than a calculated pursuit of financial security. I opened my laptop's video editing software, a professional suite that my agency used for client campaigns. The program could handle complex projects, multiple video sources, and sophisticated audio editing. I'd become proficient with it over the years, creating presentations and promotional materials that helped land major contracts. Tonight, those skills would serve a different purpose entirely. I navigated to our home server, where I'd automatically backed up photos and videos from both my phone and Ryan's. The shared cloud storage had seemed like a romantic gesture when I'd set it up, a way for us to both have access to memories from trips and special occasions. Ryan had never questioned the arrangement, grateful not to worry about managing his own backup system. The wedding video was exactly where I'd expected to find it, along with hundreds of photos from that perfect day 5 years ago. Our videographer had captured everything in stunning detail, from the morning preparations to the final dance under the stars. Ryan had insisted on hiring the most expensive team available, wanting every moment documented for posterity. The final edit was nearly 3 hours long, a comprehensive record of our commitment ceremony and celebration. I began reviewing the footage, looking for specific moments that would serve my purpose. There was Ryan's speech during the reception, where he'd talked emotionally about finding his soulmate and partner for life. His voice had cracked with emotion as he promised to love and cherish me through whatever challenges life might bring. The sincerity in his eyes had been unmistakable, at least to everyone watching that night. The video showed Ryan's parents, both successful professionals who'd been impressed by the wedding's elegance and the obvious financial investment I'd made in their son's happiness. His mother had pulled me aside during the reception to express her gratitude for how I'd supported Ryan's career and encouraged his ambitions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. His father had made a toast praising our partnership and expressing confidence in our future together. There were shots of Ryan's colleagues from the real estate firm, including Sarah Bennett, his current boss, who'd attended with her husband. Several major clients had been invited, people whose business relationships with Ryan were largely due to connections I'd facilitated through my own professional network. The wedding had been as much a business opportunity as a personal celebration, introducing Ryan to potential clients and establishing our couple as a force in Austin's luxury market. I selected specific clips that highlighted Ryan's emotional declarations of love and commitment, his promises of faithfulness and partnership, his gratitude for my support of his career. The editing process took several hours, but the result was a powerful montage that told the story of our relationship from Ryan's own words and actions. The final video was 15 minutes long, professionally edited with smooth transitions and perfect audio quality. It began with Ryan's proposal speech, where he talked about wanting to build a life together and achieve our dreams as a team. It included his wedding vows, delivered with tears in his eyes as he promised to be faithful and true for the rest of his life. The video concluded with footage from our first anniversary dinner, where Ryan had renewed his vows spontaneously and talked about how lucky he felt to be married to someone who believed in him completely. Throughout the compilation, I'd included subtle details that Ashley would recognize from Ryan's current behavior. The way he touched his wedding ring when he was nervous, a habit that he apparently still maintained during his affair. His tendency to quote specific phrases when he was trying to be romantic, expressions that he'd probably used with Ashley without realizing they were recycled from our relationship. The little gestures and mannerisms that Ashley had likely thought were unique to their connection, revealed as patterns from a much longer and deeper relationship. I uploaded the video to a private hosting service that would allow me to share it securely while tracking who viewed it and when. The analytics would show me exactly when Ashley watched it, how long she spent on each section, and whether she shared it with anyone else. Information was power, and I intended to have complete visibility into how my message was received. My phone showed that it was nearly midnight. Ryan's BMW still wasn't in the driveway, and his location sharing showed him at an address I didn't recognize in downtown Austin. A quick search revealed it was Ashley's condo building, confirming what I'd already suspected about where he was spending his evening. I composed my response message carefully, striking a tone that was calm and controlled rather than angry or emotional. "Thank you for letting me know about your relationship with my husband. I thought you might be interested in seeing some footage of Ryan discussing his feelings about marriage and commitment. I've put together a compilation that I think you'll find educational." I included the link to the video and added, "I'm sure Ryan has told you many things about our relationship. This will give you his perspective from a few years ago. Enjoy the show." The message was sent at exactly midnight, a timing choice that would ensure Ashley would likely see it late at night when she was most emotionally vulnerable. If she was with Ryan, she'd either have to wait until he left to watch it or deal with the awkwardness of explaining why she'd received a video from his wife. Either scenario would create the kind of tension and doubt that would begin undermining her confidence in their relationship. I closed my laptop and prepared for bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring new developments as Ashley processed what she'd seen and undoubtedly confronted Ryan about it. The video was just the opening move in a longer strategy, designed to plant seeds of doubt and force them both to question assumptions they'd made about our marriage and their affair. As I brushed my teeth, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and was surprised by how calm I looked. 5 years ago, discovering Ryan's betrayal would have devastated me emotionally, leaving me heartbroken and uncertain about my future. But building a successful business had taught me that emotional reactions were luxuries that successful people couldn't afford. Problems required analysis, planning, and systematic solutions, not tears and recriminations. Ryan had made a strategic error by underestimating both my capabilities and my attachment to our life together. Ashley had compounded that error by assuming that a successful woman would be easy to intimidate or manipulate. They were both about to discover that their assumptions had been not just wrong, but dangerously naive. I settled into bed alone, something that had become increasingly common as Ryan's work schedule had grown more demanding. The Egyptian cotton sheets and memory foam mattress had been my choices, purchased when we'd first moved into the house. Ryan had preferred something less expensive, but I'd insisted on quality, since we'd be spending a third of our lives in this bed. Now I appreciated the investment for entirely different reasons, enjoying the comfort without having to share space with someone whose presence had become a source of stress rather than comfort. My phone remained silent through the night, no response from Ashley to the video I'd sent. That silence was almost more telling than an angry response would have been. She was either too shocked to reply immediately, or she was dealing with the fallout of confronting Ryan about what she'd discovered. Either way, the psychological warfare had begun, and I was confident in my position for the battles ahead. The next morning brought confirmation of what I'd suspected. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Ashley's number between 2 and 4 in the morning, followed by a series of increasingly frantic text messages. The first was simple confusion. "What kind of sick game are you playing?" The second showed she'd watched the entire video. "Ryan never told me about these promises he made to you." By the third message, doubt had clearly taken root. "This doesn't change anything between us, but I need to talk to him about some things." I was sipping my morning coffee on the deck overlooking Lake Austin when Ryan's BMW finally pulled into the driveway at 7:30. He looked exhausted, his usually perfect hair disheveled, and his expensive suit wrinkled from what had clearly been an uncomfortable night. Through the kitchen window, I watched him fumble with his keys, check his phone multiple times, and pause at the front door as if gathering courage before entering our home. "Morning, honey," I called out cheerfully as he stepped onto the deck. "Coffee's fresh if you want some. You must be exhausted after such a late night with those California investors." Ryan's face went through several micro-expressions before settling on forced casualness. "Yeah, it was a long one. They wanted to see everything twice, then insisted on going over the contracts until almost midnight." The lie came automatically, but I could see the strain around his eyes, the way his left hand moved unconsciously to his wedding ring, a nervous habit he'd developed over the years. That's dedication to customer service, I replied, taking another sip of my coffee. I hope they're serious buyers after keeping you out so late. We'll see. They're supposed to get back to us this week with their decision. He poured himself coffee with shaking hands, and I noticed he kept glancing at his phone, which had been buzzing intermittently since he'd arrived home. I spent the morning at my agency's offices on South Congress, catching up on client work and allowing Elena to brief me on the meeting she'd rescheduled from my cleared afternoon. My digital marketing firm occupied the entire third floor of a converted warehouse that had become one of Austin's most sought-after commercial addresses. The exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows created an atmosphere that impressed clients while providing my team with an inspiring work environment. Maria Santos, my business partner and closest friend, knocked on my office door around 10 o'clock. We'd known each other since college at UT, where we'd both studied business with a focus on emerging digital technologies. Maria handled the creative side of our agency, while I focused on strategy and client relationships, a partnership that had proven incredibly successful over the past 8 years. You look like someone who didn't sleep much last night, Maria observed, settling into the chair across from my desk. Everything okay at home? I considered how much to tell her. Maria had never particularly liked Ryan, though she'd been diplomatic about her concerns over the years. She'd questioned his rapid lifestyle changes after our marriage, noting how quickly he'd adapted to expensive tastes and high-end preferences that seemed inconsistent with his previous personality. Maria had a keen eye for authenticity, probably because her job required her to create genuine connections between brands and consumers. Ryan's been working late a lot recently, I said carefully. Big clients, important deals, you know how real estate can be. Maria raised an eyebrow, her expression suggesting she knew there was more to the story. Real estate's been pretty good to him since you two got married. Funny how his career took off right around the time he gained access to your professional network. The observation stung because it highlighted something I'd been trying not to think about. Ryan's success had coincided remarkably with our relationship, not just because of the connections I'd provided, but because of the financial stability and professional credibility that came with being married to a successful entrepreneur. His colleagues and clients saw him as more established and trustworthy because of our partnership, and several major deals had come through referrals from my business contacts. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. David Kim from the law firm called. Says it's urgent and personal, not business-related. Should I schedule something for this afternoon? David had been my attorney since I'd started the business, handling everything from contracts to intellectual property issues. For him to call about something personal meant he'd either heard something concerning or anticipated that I might need legal advice soon. I texted back to schedule a meeting for 2 o'clock, then turned my attention to the stack of campaign proposals that needed review. Work had always been my refuge during difficult times, a place where problems had clear solutions and success was measurable. Unlike personal relationships, business challenges could be solved through preparation, strategy, and execution. The morning passed quickly as I dove into client work, but my concentration was repeatedly broken by thoughts of Ashley's panicked text messages and Ryan's obvious discomfort that morning. The video had achieved its intended effect, planting doubt and forcing them both to confront the reality that their affair was built on incomplete information and false assumptions about my marriage. At noon, my phone rang with a call from Sarah Bennett, Ryan's boss at the luxury real estate firm. Sarah and I had maintained a friendly relationship since Ryan had joined her team, occasionally meeting for lunch to discuss Austin's growing tech scene and its impact on the luxury housing market. Her call was unexpected but not entirely surprising, given the interconnected nature of our professional lives. Jessica, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important, Sarah began, her tone suggesting this wasn't a social call. I wanted to touch base with you about Ryan's performance lately. He seemed distracted, and there have been some concerns about his client management. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. What kind of concerns? Missed appointments, delayed responses to client inquiries, and some questions about expense reports that don't quite add up. Nothing major yet, but enough that I thought I should mention it. Has he seemed stressed at home? Any personal issues that might be affecting his work? The irony was almost overwhelming. Ryan's affair was not only destroying our marriage, but apparently threatening his career as well. The late nights and secret meetings with Ashley were creating professional problems that could jeopardize everything we'd worked to build together. He's mentioned some challenging clients recently, I said diplomatically. Big deals that require a lot of attention. Maybe the pressure is getting to him. That's possible, Sarah replied, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. I wanted to give you a heads up because I value our relationship and I know how much you've supported his career. If there's anything going on that might help explain the situation, it would be good to address it before it becomes a bigger problem. After ending the call, I sat back in my chair and considered the expanding implications of Ryan's betrayal. His affair wasn't just a personal matter anymore. It was affecting his professional performance and potentially damaging relationships that extended far beyond our marriage. The ripple effects were beginning to touch our entire social and business network. I pulled up Ashley's social media profiles again, looking for any updates since she'd received my video. Her Instagram story from that morning showed her at an expensive spa in Westlake Hills, apparently treating herself to a full day of pampering. The posts were clearly designed to project confidence and luxury, but I could see subtle signs of stress in her forced smiles and overly enthusiastic captions. Her latest post was particularly telling. A photo of herself in a plush spa robe with the caption, "Self-Care Sunday because I deserve to be treated like a queen." Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. The passive-aggressive tone suggested she was still processing what she'd seen in the wedding video, using social media to maintain her facade while privately dealing with uncomfortable questions about Ryan's commitment. I opened a new browser tab and began researching Ashley's background more thoroughly. Her design business was registered as a sole proprietorship with minimal business insurance and no employees. Her client portfolio, while impressive in the photos, consisted largely of small projects and staging work, rather than the major residential redesigns she implied on social media. More concerning was a pattern of complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau over the past 2 years. Clients had accused Ashley of overcharging for services, using subcontractor work while billing for her own time, and in one case, allegedly stealing expensive artwork from a client's home during a renovation project. The complaint had been resolved out of court, but the documentation suggested a pattern of ethical issues in her business practices. Her financial situation was even more precarious than I'd initially discovered. A deeper dive into public records revealed 2 previous bankruptcies, one filed when she was 23 and another just 3 years ago. She'd been evicted from multiple apartments for non-payment of rent, and her current condo was apparently financed through a subprime lender at an interest rate that suggested desperation. Ashley Chen wasn't just targeting my husband, she was targeting our lifestyle as a solution to her ongoing financial crisis. The expensive clothes, luxury car, and upscale social media presence were all part of an elaborate performance designed to attract a wealthy partner who could solve her money problems permanently. My 2 o'clock meeting with David Kim took place in his downtown office, a corner suite in one of Austin's most prestigious law firms. David had been my attorney for almost a decade, handling everything from business incorporation to contract negotiations. He was known for his discretion and strategic thinking, qualities that had made him invaluable as my business grew and became more complex. "Thanks for making time on short notice," I said as his secretary closed the door behind me. "I have a situation that requires some legal guidance." David gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "Personal or professional?" "Personal, but with potential professional implications." I gave him a brief overview of Ryan's affair and the financial irregularities I'd discovered, including the credit card charges and false expense reports that had apparently caught Sarah Bennett's attention. David took notes on a legal pad, asking clarifying questions about our financial arrangements and the documentation I'd gathered. His expression remained professionally neutral, but I could see him calculating the potential legal ramifications of what I was describing. "The good news is that your assets are well protected," he said finally. "The house is in your name alone, your business interests are completely separate from Ryan's activities, and the prenuptial agreement we drafted is comprehensive. If you decide to pursue divorce, you're in a very strong position." "What about the misuse of company resources?" I asked. "Some of these affair-related expenses were charged to credit cards that I co-signed, and he's been using our shared accounts for things I never authorized. That's more complicated, but potentially actionable depending on how you want to proceed. Using marital funds for an extramarital affair can be considered financial misconduct in Texas, especially if the amounts are significant. David flipped through his notes. You mentioned concerns about his work performance. Has he discussed any professional issues with you? I told him about Sarah Bennett's call and her concerns about Ryan's recent behavior. David frowned, making additional notes about the potential for professional consequences that could affect our shared financial interests. I'd recommend documenting everything you can find, he advised. Financial records, communications, any evidence of the affair that might be relevant to asset protection. If this situation escalates, having comprehensive documentation will be crucial. What about the other woman, Ashley Chen? I've discovered some concerning information about her background, including financial problems and questionable business practices. David's eyebrows raised slightly. What kind of information? I shared what I'd learned about Ashley's bankruptcies, client complaints, and apparent financial desperation. David listened carefully, occasionally asking for clarification about specific details. This puts a different perspective on the situation, he said when I finished. If Ms. Chen is specifically targeting Ryan because of his apparent wealth and your lifestyle, that could constitute fraud or financial manipulation. The fact that she's misrepresenting her own financial situation while pursuing a married man suggests a pattern of deceptive behavior. Could that be relevant if this goes to court? Potentially, yes. If you can demonstrate that she actively pursued Ryan with knowledge of his marital status, and specifically because of his apparent financial resources, it could support claims of intentional interference with your marriage. Texas law allows for alienation of affection claims in certain circumstances. The meeting concluded with David agreeing to begin quietly investigating both Ryan's recent financial activities and Ashley's background. He had contacts at several investigative firms that specialized in matrimonial cases, professionals who could gather evidence without alerting the targets to what was happening. I left his office feeling more in control of the situation, armed with legal options and a clear understanding of how to protect my interests. The afternoon sun was bright as I walked back to my car, and I found myself appreciating the energy and optimism of downtown Austin. Food trucks lined the streets, live music drifted from open-air venues, and the overall atmosphere was one of creativity and possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Working late again tonight. Big presentation tomorrow for a potential commercial client. Don't wait up. The message was nearly identical to ones he'd sent dozens of times over the past few months, part of a pattern that had become so routine I'd stopped questioning it. Now I wondered how many of those late nights had been real work, and how many had been cover stories for Time with Ashley. I drove to my agency's offices to collect some files I needed for the next day's meetings. The building was quiet, most of my staff having left for the day, but I appreciated the peaceful atmosphere for thinking through my next moves. Elena had left a stack of messages on my desk, including several from potential new clients, and one from a reporter at Austin Business Journal requesting an interview about women entrepreneurs in the tech sector. As I gathered my materials, I reflected on how much my life had changed since starting the business 8 years ago. I'd gone from being a recent college graduate with big dreams and limited resources to running one of Austin's most successful digital marketing agencies. The journey had required sacrifice, long hours, and constant learning, but it had also provided me with financial independence and professional respect that no one could take away. Ryan had been supportive during the early years, encouraging my ambitions and celebrating my successes. But as the business grew and my income surpassed his, I'd noticed subtle changes in his attitude. He'd become more sensitive about who paid for dinners and vacations, more insistent on expensive purchases that seemed designed to demonstrate his own success, and more prone to making comments about how my work schedule affected our personal time. The irony was that my professional success had enabled the lifestyle Ryan now took for granted. The lakefront house, luxury cars, country club membership, and expensive vacations were all funded by my business income. Ryan's real estate commissions were substantial, but they were inconsistent and seasonal, while my agency provided steady revenue that had grown every year since inception. I locked up the office and drove home through the early evening traffic, passing the restaurant where Ryan claimed to be having his business dinner. The parking lot showed no sign of his BMW, confirming what I already knew about where he actually was spending his time. The lies had become so automatic that he apparently didn't even bother to make them plausible anymore. The house felt different when I entered, somehow less like a home and more like a stage set for a life that was rapidly becoming fiction. I walked through the rooms that had once represented our shared dreams and future plans, noting how many of the furnishings and decorative choices had been mine. Ryan had contributed opinions and preferences, but the actual selections and purchases had largely been my responsibility. In the kitchen, I found evidence of Ryan's hurried morning departure. A coffee mug in the sink, toast crumbs on the counter, and his phone charger left plugged in by the breakfast bar. The casual mess suggested someone who was distracted and possibly stressed, not the confident man who'd been conducting a months-long affair with apparent ease. I poured myself a glass of wine from a bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion and settled on the couch to review the documents David's office had prepared. The legal language was dense but clear in its implications. I had multiple options for protecting my assets and pursuing damages, depending on how I chose to proceed. My phone rang with a call from Maria, who was checking in after our morning conversation. "How was your afternoon? You seemed stressed earlier." "Better now," I replied, taking a sip of wine. "I had some legal consultations that clarified a few things." "Legal consultations about what?" Maria's voice carried the concern of a friend who suspected something serious was happening. I considered how much to tell her, then decided that having an ally who understood the situation might be valuable. "Ryan's been having an affair. I found out yesterday, and I'm trying to figure out how to handle it." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds before Maria responded. "Oh, Jess. I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" "I'm angry, but I'm also thinking clearly. This isn't just about the affair. There are business implications and financial issues that need to be addressed. Do you want me to come over? You shouldn't be dealing with this alone." "That's sweet, but I'm actually okay for tonight. I have some planning to do, and I think better when I'm by myself." It was true. Some of my best business strategies had emerged during quiet evenings when I could think through complex problems without distractions. "Well, call me if you need anything. And, Jess? Whatever you decide to do, you have my complete support. You've built an amazing life for yourself, and you don't deserve to have someone mess that up." After ending the call, I opened my laptop and began creating a comprehensive timeline of Ryan's affair based on the evidence I'd gathered. Credit card charges, unexplained absences, changes in behavior, and inconsistencies in his stories all pointed to a relationship that had been developing for several months. The pattern revealed careful planning on both sides. Ryan had gradually increased his claims of work-related obligations, creating cover for regular meetings with Ashley. She had positioned herself as a client needing extensive consultation and support, providing professional justification for their contact. The arrangement had allowed them to develop their relationship while maintaining the fiction that they were simply conducting business. What neither of them had anticipated was my capacity for investigation and strategic thinking. Ashley's confidence in texting me directly suggested she believed I was either unaware of the extent of their relationship or too emotionally devastated to respond effectively. Ryan's casual attitude about covering his tracks indicated he thought I was too trusting or too busy to notice his deception. They were both about to discover that their assumptions had been fundamentally flawed. The wedding video was just the beginning of a more comprehensive campaign, designed to expose their relationship and force them to confront the consequences of their choices. As the evening progressed, I finalized my plans for the next phase of my response. Tomorrow would bring new revelations and escalated consequences as I began implementing the strategy David and I had discussed. Ryan and Ashley had initiated this conflict by deciding to pursue their affair at the expense of my marriage and emotional well-being. Now they would learn what it meant to be in conflict with someone who understood the value of preparation, documentation, and strategic thinking. The game they thought they were winning was about to change rules entirely, and I intended to be the one writing those new rules. The house settled into quiet as the sun set over Lake Austin, casting long shadows across the rooms that had once represented my dreams of a shared future. Tomorrow would begin the process of reclaiming my life and ensuring that the people who had tried to take advantage of my trust faced appropriate consequences for their choices. I finished my wine and closed my laptop, satisfied with the foundation I'd laid for the challenges ahead. Sleep came easily that night, the rest of someone who had identified a problem and begun implementing a solution. Whatever happened next, I would face it from a position of strength and preparation. Wednesday morning arrived with an unexpected development that changed everything I thought I knew about Ashley Chen's motivations. David Kim called at 7:30 with information from his preliminary investigation that painted a far more complex picture than a simple gold digger targeting a successful married man. Ashley Chen isn't her real name, David said without preamble when I answered his call. Her birth name is Ashley Chen Williams, and she's been using variations of her identity for the past 5 years. More importantly, she's connected to your business in ways that go beyond coincidence. I was standing in my kitchen, coffee mug halfway to my lips, when the implications of his words hit me. Connected how? She worked briefly as a contractor for Pinnacle Digital Solutions 2 years ago. Ring any bells? Pinnacle had been one of my agency's biggest competitors until they'd collapsed spectacularly following a major client scandal. They'd been caught inflating metrics and billing for services never rendered, resulting in lawsuits that had destroyed their reputation and forced them into bankruptcy. Several of their former employees had joined my agency after the collapse, bringing valuable experience and helping us expand into new markets. She was part of their creative team for about 6 months, David continued. According to employment records, she was terminated for accessing client files she wasn't authorized to view. The termination happened just 3 weeks before Pinnacle's legal troubles became public. The coffee mug trembled in my hands as I processed this information. Ashley's pursuit of Ryan wasn't random attraction or even opportunistic gold digging. It was reconnaissance, a deliberate infiltration designed to gather intelligence about my business operations through my personal life. There's more, David said grimly. Pinnacle's bankruptcy proceedings revealed they'd been hired by a consortium of investors to conduct competitive intelligence on Austin's major digital marketing firms. Your agency was specifically mentioned in several internal memos as a primary target for acquisition or elimination. I sank into one of the kitchen stools, my mind racing through the implications. Who was funding this consortium? That's where it gets interesting. The primary investor was Wilson Acquisition Group, owned by James Wilson. He's been systematically targeting successful Austin businesses for hostile takeovers, using corporate espionage and personal manipulation to gather leverage. James Wilson. The name meant nothing to me personally, but I'd heard it mentioned in business circles as someone who specialized in acquiring undervalued companies through aggressive tactics. The fact that Ashley was connected to him explained her sophisticated approach to targeting Ryan and her apparent knowledge of our financial situation. So this was never about Ryan specifically, I said, pieces falling into place. She was targeting our marriage to get information about my business. That's our working theory. Wilson's previous acquisitions have followed similar patterns. Identify key personnel at target companies, find personal vulnerabilities, exploit those weaknesses to gather intelligence or create leverage for negotiations. The betrayal felt deeper now, more calculated and coldly professional. Ryan hadn't been seduced by a beautiful woman who'd genuinely fallen for his charm. He'd been recruited as an unwitting asset in a corporate espionage operation designed to destroy my business. What kind of information could she have gathered through Ryan? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Client lists, financial projections, strategic plans, employee information. Anything he might have overheard during business calls at home or seen in documents left on your desk. Ryan had access to your personal workspace and could have photographed sensitive materials without you knowing. I thought about all the times Ryan had been in my home office during business calls, the documents I'd left on my desk overnight, the strategic planning sessions I'd conducted from home during the pandemic. The amount of confidential information he could have accessed was staggering. We need to assume they have comprehensive intelligence about your operations, David continued. Client contracts, financial statements, employee records, strategic initiatives. Everything Wilson would need to either make an acquisition offer or launch competitive attacks against your business. The magnitude of the deception was overwhelming. For months, perhaps longer, My own husband had been an unwitting spy in my home, photographing documents and reporting conversations to a woman who was feeding information to someone planning to destroy my business. The affair had been cover for corporate espionage on a scale I'd never imagined. "What's our next move?" I asked, forcing myself to focus on solutions rather than the emotional devastation of this revelation. "First, we secure your business systems immediately. Change all passwords, revoke any access Ryan might have had to company systems, and conduct a comprehensive security audit. Second, we gather evidence of their espionage activities. And third, we consider whether to involve federal authorities." Federal authorities? Corporate espionage involving interstate commerce is a federal crime. If we can prove Wilson's organization has been systematically targeting businesses across state lines, the FBI's white-collar crime division would be very interested. I spent the next hour on emergency calls with Marcus Thompson, my IT security director, implementing immediate protective measures for my business systems. Marcus had been warning me for years about the need for enhanced cybersecurity, particularly as the agency grew and attracted higher-profile clients. Now his paranoia seemed prescient rather than excessive. "We're changing every password, implementing two-factor authentication across all systems, and conducting a full audit of recent access logs," Marcus reported during our video conference. "If someone's been accessing our systems through compromised credentials, we'll find the evidence." "How quickly can you complete the audit?" I asked. "Give me 48 hours for a preliminary report, a week for comprehensive analysis." "But, Jessica, if there's been ongoing unauthorized access, some of this information might already be compromised beyond recovery." The business implications were staggering. Client confidentiality was the foundation of my agency's reputation. If sensitive information had been leaked to competitors, particularly a hostile acquisition group, the damage could be irreversible. Major clients might terminate contracts, employees could lose their jobs, and years of careful relationship building could be destroyed overnight. I called Maria to bring her up to speed on the corporate espionage angle, knowing she'd need to be prepared for potential client concerns and employee questions. Her reaction was immediate and furious. "That bastard," she said when I finished explaining the situation. "Ryan's been selling us out this entire time, and he probably doesn't even realize it. He thought he was just impressing his girlfriend with insider information about his successful wife. The question now is how much damage has been done, and whether we can contain it," I replied. "We need to be prepared for anything from client defections to hostile acquisition attempts." "What about going on the offensive? If Wilson's been using illegal methods to target Austin businesses, other entrepreneurs need to know about it. We could expose the entire operation and protect the business community." The idea had merit. Austin's entrepreneurial community was tight-knit and supportive, built on relationships and mutual trust. If Wilson was systematically targeting local businesses through personal manipulation and corporate espionage, exposing his methods would not only protect my agency, but prevent other entrepreneurs from falling victim to similar schemes. My phone rang with a call from Elena, who was fielding an unusual number of inquiries from reporters and business journalists. 3 different publications have called this morning asking about rumors of acquisition discussions, she reported. They're specifically asking about Wilson Acquisition Group and whether we're in negotiations. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Wilson was apparently moving to the next phase of his operation, using planted rumors to create market pressure and force acquisition discussions. It was a classic hostile takeover tactic, designed to make resistance seem futile and acceptance inevitable. "Tell them we don't comment on market rumors," I instructed, "but keep detailed records of who's calling and what they're asking." This could be part of a coordinated information campaign. By noon, the scope of Wilson's operation was becoming clearer. David's investigators had discovered similar patterns in San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston, where successful mid-sized businesses had been targeted through personal relationships and subsequently acquired by Wilson's consortium at below-market valuations. The methodology was sophisticated and cruel. Wilson's team would identify successful business owners, research their personal lives for vulnerabilities, then insert operatives into their social circles to gather intelligence and create leverage. Marriages were destroyed, business partnerships dissolved, and entrepreneurs were left emotionally and financially devastated, while Wilson acquired their companies for pennies on the dollar. He's been operating this way for at least 5 years, David reported during our afternoon conference call. The pattern is consistent across multiple cities and industries. Personal infiltration, intelligence gathering, strategic manipulation, then forced acquisition when the target is most vulnerable. How many businesses has he acquired this way? At least a dozen that we can document, probably more. Combined value of the acquisitions is over $200 million, but he's paid maybe 30% of market value because the targets were under duress when they sold. The scale of Wilson's operation explained Ashley's sophisticated approach and extensive preparation. She wasn't a desperate woman seeking financial security through an affair. She was a professional operative working for an organization that specialized in destroying successful businesses through personal manipulation. What about Ashley's background? I asked. How did she become involved with Wilson? Still investigating, but preliminary information suggests she was recruited after her second bankruptcy. Wilson's organization specifically targets people with financial problems and questionable ethics, offering them substantial payments for successful operations. The profile fit perfectly. Ashley's financial desperation had made her vulnerable to recruitment, while her design background provided cover for developing relationships with wealthy homeowners and business executives. Her previous business failures had eliminated ethical constraints that might have prevented her from targeting married couples. How much was she being paid? I asked, morbid curiosity driving the question. Base fee of $50,000, plus bonuses based on the quality of intelligence gathered and the ultimate success of the acquisition. If Wilson had successfully acquired your agency, Ashley would have received an additional $250,000. The numbers explained Ashley's confidence and persistence. She wasn't just pursuing Ryan for emotional satisfaction or lifestyle improvement. She was executing a professional assignment with substantial financial incentives. The affair was her job, with performance metrics and bonus structures that justified the time and effort she'd invested. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, sent from his office during what should have been a busy workday. Can we talk tonight? I know things have been strained lately, and I want to work on our communication. The message felt different now, loaded with implications I hadn't previously considered. Was this Ryan's genuine desire to address our relationship problems? Or was Ashley pressuring him to gather more intelligence before their operation moved to the next phase? Had he been instructed to repair our relationship to maintain his access to confidential information? Or was he finally experiencing guilt about his betrayal? I forwarded the message to David with a brief note, asking for his advice on how to handle Ryan's apparent attempt at reconciliation. The response came back within minutes, suggesting that any conversation with Ryan needed to be carefully managed to avoid revealing what I'd discovered about the larger conspiracy. Play along for now, David advised in his return message. We need more evidence before confronting him directly. If he's an unwitting asset, pushing too hard could cause him to retreat, or warn Ashley that we're onto them. The afternoon brought additional revelations as Marcus completed his preliminary security audit. The news was worse than I'd feared, but better than it could have been. Someone's been accessing our client database using your home network, Marcus reported during our emergency meeting. The access pattern suggests they were photographing screen contents rather than downloading files directly, probably trying to avoid leaving digital traces. How long has this been going on? At least 4 months, possibly longer. The access always occurred during evening hours when you would typically be working from home, and it coincided with times when your home security system showed Ryan was present. The timeline matched perfectly with Ryan's affair, confirming that Ashley had been directing him to gather specific information during their relationship. He'd probably been told it was innocent curiosity about my work, or perhaps she'd framed it as romantic interest in understanding my professional life better. What specific information was accessed? I asked, dreading the answer. Client contact lists, project timelines, financial projections for the next 18 months, and strategic planning documents for the tech sector expansion. Essentially everything someone would need to either compete with us directly or make an informed acquisition offer. The violation felt personal in ways that went beyond business concerns. My home office had been my sanctuary. the place where I'd developed strategies and built relationships that had created everything I'd achieved professionally. Knowing that space had been compromised by someone I'd trusted with my most intimate thoughts and feelings added another layer of betrayal to an already devastating situation. "Can we trace exactly what was photographed?" I asked. "We can identify which files were accessed, but not what specific information was captured. However, the pattern suggests systematic intelligence gathering rather than random curiosity. Someone was directing this operation with specific objectives." The evidence was building a clear picture of a sophisticated corporate espionage operation that had used my marriage as cover for systematic theft of business intelligence. Ryan had been manipulated into betraying both my personal trust and my professional interests, all while believing he was simply having an affair with a woman who found him attractive and successful. As the day progressed, I found myself viewing my entire relationship with Ryan through this new lens. How many of our conversations about business had been guided by Ashley's intelligence requirements? How many seemingly innocent questions about clients or projects had actually been reconnaissance missions designed to gather competitive information? The thought that my marriage had been systematically exploited for corporate espionage added a layer of violation that went beyond simple adultery. Ryan hadn't just betrayed our relationship, he'd been weaponized against my professional life, turned into an unwitting asset in someone else's campaign to destroy everything I'd built. Evening approached with Ryan's promised return home for our conversation about communication and relationship issues. I spent an hour preparing for what would essentially be a counterintelligence operation, carefully considering how to gather information about Ashley's activities without revealing what I'd discovered about the larger conspiracy. David had provided specific guidance about approaching the conversation, emphasizing the need to appear emotionally vulnerable while actually maintaining strategic control. The goal was to make Ryan feel safe enough to reveal information about Ashley's questions and interests, while avoiding any indication that I suspected corporate espionage. The house felt different as I waited for Ryan's arrival, transformed from a home into a battleground where information was the primary weapon. Everything I'd believed about my marriage, my security, and my business had been revealed as carefully constructed illusions designed to facilitate someone else's agenda. When Ryan's BMW pulled into the driveway at 6:30, I was ready for a conversation that would determine not just the future of our marriage, but the survival of the business I'd spent 8 years building. The man walking through my front door wasn't just my unfaithful husband. He was an intelligence asset who'd been systematically exploited to gather information that could destroy everything I'd worked to achieve. The next few hours would reveal whether Ryan was a willing participant in Wilson's operation or an unwitting victim who could be turned into an ally. Either way, the conversation would mark the beginning of my counterattack against an organization that had made the mistake of targeting someone who understood the true value of strategic thinking and careful preparation. Ashley Chen had initiated this conflict by texting me about claiming my husband. She'd thought she was dealing with a betrayed wife who would react emotionally and irrationally to discovering an affair. Instead, she'd revealed herself as a professional operative, working for an organization that had seriously underestimated both my capabilities and my determination to protect what was mine. The real war was just beginning, and Wilson's organization was about to discover that they'd chosen the wrong target for their sophisticated campaign of corporate espionage and personal manipulation. Ryan arrived home that evening with flowers and a bottle of expensive wine, his face carrying the carefully practiced expression of a man preparing to have a difficult conversation about relationship issues. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the afternoon installing additional recording equipment throughout our house, transforming our supposed reconciliation dinner into a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation. "These are beautiful," I said, accepting the bouquet of white roses with what I hoped appeared to be genuine appreciation. "What's the occasion?" "I've been thinking about us lately," Ryan replied, uncorking the wine with the confident movements of someone who'd done this many times before. "I know I've been distracted with work, and I want to make sure we're still connecting as a couple." The irony was overwhelming. Ryan was following a script designed to repair our relationship so he could continue feeding information to Ashley, while I was documenting every word for evidence in what would soon become a federal investigation into corporate espionage. We were both performing roles in a drama that neither of us fully understood. Over dinner, I carefully guided the conversation toward topics that would reveal the extent of Ashley's intelligence gathering. Using techniques I'd learned from negotiating with difficult clients, I created opportunities for Ryan to share information while making him feel like he was being the emotionally open partner I'd apparently been requesting. "I worry sometimes that you don't really understand what I do all day," I said, refilling his wine glass and watching his eyes carefully. "The business side of marketing is so complex, and I know it must seem boring when I talk about client strategies and competitive analysis." Ryan's face lit up with what appeared to be genuine interest, though I now suspected it was actually relief at having a legitimate reason to ask questions Ashley had probably been pressing him to explore. "I'd love to understand better," he said enthusiastically. "What kind of competitive pressures are you dealing with? Are there other agencies in Austin that you worry about?" The question was too specific and too perfectly aligned with Wilson's intelligence requirements to be coincidental. Ryan was fishing for exactly the kind of information that a hostile acquisition group would need to plan their strategy. "Well, there's always competition," I replied carefully, "but most of it comes from larger firms in Dallas or Houston trying to expand into Austin. The local market is pretty collaborative, actually. We tend to refer business to each other when we're not the right fit for a particular client." I watched Ryan process this information, noting how he seemed to be mentally cataloging details rather than simply listening to his wife discuss her workday. The man I'd married had never shown this level of interest in the competitive dynamics of digital marketing. "That's interesting," he said, leaning forward with apparent fascination. "So you don't see Austin firms as threats? What about companies from outside Texas? Are there national players trying to move into the market?" The specificity of his questions confirmed my suspicions about Ashley's coaching. Someone had provided him with a list of intelligence priorities, and he was working through them with the persistence of a professional interrogator. "There are always rumors about acquisition discussions," I said, deciding to test his reaction to information that might alarm Ashley and her handlers. "Some of the larger holding companies have been making offers to successful regional agencies, trying to build networks of local expertise under national management." Ryan's wine glass stopped halfway to his lips, and I saw a flicker of something that might have been panic cross his face before he controlled his expression. "Have you been approached by anyone?" he asked, trying to maintain casual interest while clearly fishing for crucial intelligence. "Nothing serious," I lied smoothly. "A few preliminary conversations, but I'm not interested in selling. The agency is too important to me personally, and I like having control over our strategic direction." The relief in Ryan's eyes was unmistakable, confirming that Ashley's operation was indeed focused on acquisition possibilities rather than simple competitive intelligence. Wilson's group needed to know whether I was open to selling before investing more resources in their elaborate scheme. As the evening progressed, Ryan's questions became increasingly sophisticated, covering topics from client retention strategies to employee compensation structures. It was clear that Ashley had provided him with comprehensive briefing materials, probably disguised as casual conversation during their romantic encounters. "You know what I've always admired about your business?" Ryan said as we finished dinner. "How you've managed to keep such detailed financial projections and strategic plans. Most entrepreneurs I meet through real estate are much more seat of the pants in their approach." The comment revealed that Ashley knew about my comprehensive business planning documents, information that could only have come from Ryan's access to my home office. The compliment was designed to encourage me to share more details about financial planning and strategic forecasting. "Planning is everything in this business," I replied. "Clients want to know that you understand their long-term objectives and can deliver consistent results. That requires pretty sophisticated financial modeling and strategic analysis." "Do you mind if I ask about your growth projections?" Ryan continued, his tone carefully casual. "I mean, are you planning significant expansion? Or are you more focused on optimizing current operations?" The question was exactly what an acquisition group would need to determine valuation and investment requirements. Ashley had coached him well, using his legitimate role as my husband to gather intelligence that would have been impossible to obtain through conventional corporate espionage. "Growth is always the goal," I said vaguely, "but sustainable growth that doesn't compromise our client relationships or company culture." My phone buzzed with a text message that I'd been expecting all evening. Marcus had completed his analysis of our network security and was ready to brief me on his findings. The timing was perfect, giving me an excuse to step away from Ryan's interrogation while maintaining the appearance of normal business communications. "Sorry, honey," I said, glancing at my phone. "Marcus found some issues with our security system that need immediate attention. Do you mind if I take this call?" "Of course not," Ryan replied, though I noticed he seemed disappointed to have his intelligence gathering interrupted. "I'll clean up dinner." I took the call in my home office, closing the door and activating the white noise generator I'd installed to prevent eavesdropping on sensitive business conversations. Marcus's news was both alarming and vindicating. "We've found evidence of systematic data exfiltration going back 6 months, Marcus reported grimly. "Someone's been photographing documents displayed on your home computer screen, probably using a high-resolution camera with telephoto lens capabilities. How can you tell it was photography rather than digital access? The access patterns are too irregular for automated systems, and there's no evidence of file downloads or system intrusions. But we found something interesting in the metadata from your home security cameras." Marcus had cross-referenced the timing of suspicious network activity with my home security footage, looking for patterns that might reveal how the intelligence was being gathered. "Every instance of unauthorized access coincides with Ryan being present in your office while you were working on sensitive documents. But more importantly, we found instances where he was photographing your computer screen with his phone during video calls when you left the room briefly." The betrayal felt fresh and sharp, even though I'd already suspected Ryan's involvement. Having photographic evidence of him systematically documenting my work transformed abstract suspicion into concrete reality. "How much information was compromised?" I asked. "Potentially everything. Client lists, financial data, strategic plans, employee records, competitive analysis. If someone wanted to launch a hostile acquisition or start a competing firm, they'd have all the intelligence they needed." The scope of the breach was staggering, representing years of careful relationship building and strategic planning that had been systematically stolen through my own marriage. Wilson's organization had essentially conducted industrial espionage using my husband as an unwitting asset. "What's our next move?" I asked. "We've documented everything for legal proceedings, and I've prepared a comprehensive security audit that details the extent of the breach." "But Jessica, you need to know that this level of systematic intelligence gathering suggests professional coordination." This wasn't amateur hour. After ending the call with Marcus, I returned to the living room where Ryan was waiting with apparent concern about my business emergency. The man sitting on my couch looked the same as always, but I now saw him as a compromised asset who'd been systematically exploited to gather intelligence against my interests. "Everything okay?" he asked, setting down his wine glass and giving me his full attention. "Network security issues," I replied. "Nothing that can't be fixed, but it's concerning when you realize how vulnerable business systems can be to infiltration." Ryan's face went pale, and I saw his hand move unconsciously toward his phone before he stopped himself. The reaction confirmed that he understood the implications of what I'd said, probably because Ashley had warned him about the possibility of discovery. "What kind of infiltration?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. "The kind where someone gains access to sensitive information through personal relationships rather than technical hacking," I replied, watching his expression carefully. "It's actually more common than people realize. Trusted individuals who have access to information systems can be manipulated or compromised without realizing it." The color drained from Ryan's face completely, and I saw him swallow hard before attempting to respond. He knew exactly what I was describing because he'd been living it for months. "That sounds terrifying," he managed. "How would someone even protect against that kind of threat?" "Comprehensive background checks, restricted access protocols, and most importantly, paying attention to behavioral changes in people who have access to sensitive information," I said. "Sometimes the people closest to you are the biggest security risks, especially if they're being manipulated by outside parties." Ryan stood up abruptly, mumbling something about needing to use the bathroom, but I could see his hands shaking as he walked away. The conversation had achieved its intended effect, making him understand that his activities had been discovered without directly confronting him about Ashley or the larger conspiracy. While Ryan was out of the room, I sent a quick text to David Kim, confirming that we'd gathered sufficient evidence to move forward with legal action. The recording equipment had captured Ryan's systematic intelligence gathering, while Marcus's technical analysis had documented the scope of the security breach. My phone buzzed with a response from David, indicating that federal authorities were ready to move forward with arrests and seizures related to Wilson's corporate espionage operation. The investigation had expanded to include similar cases in multiple states, and my documentation had provided crucial evidence of the organization's methods and objectives. When Ryan returned to the living room, his demeanor had changed completely. The confident, charming man who'd arrived with flowers and wine had been replaced by someone who looked genuinely terrified about the consequences of his actions. "Jess," he began hesitantly, "I need to tell you something important. About Ashley, and some things that have been happening that I didn't fully understand." The confession came in a rush of guilty conscience and growing panic about legal consequences. Ryan had finally realized that Ashley's romantic interest had been performance designed to gather intelligence, and that his cooperation had made him an accessory to corporate espionage. He described months of seemingly innocent questions about my business, requests to see my home office setup, and casual suggestions that he photograph interesting documents or conversations for later discussion. Ashley had framed everything as romantic interest in understanding my professional life better, gradually escalating her intelligence requirements while maintaining the fiction of genuine emotional connection. "She kept asking about acquisition rumors and whether you'd ever consider selling," Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought she was just making conversation, maybe trying to understand our financial situation for planning our future together." The revelation that Ashley had been discussing future plans with Ryan added another layer of manipulation to her operation. She'd convinced him that their relationship was headed toward marriage and shared financial planning, making her questions about my business seem like legitimate concerns about their combined household income. "When did you start taking pictures of my work?" I asked directly. Ryan's face crumpled with shame and fear. "She said she wanted to understand the kind of strategic thinking that made you so successful. She framed it as admiration for your intelligence and business acumen. I thought I was sharing something that would help her appreciate what an amazing wife I had." The psychological manipulation had been sophisticated and cruel, exploiting Ryan's pride in my achievements while turning him into an instrument of corporate espionage. Ashley had convinced him that documenting my work was an expression of love and admiration, rather than theft of proprietary information. "How much did you share with her?" I asked. "Everything," he whispered. "Client information, financial projections, strategic plans, employee details. She seemed so interested in understanding your success, and I wanted her to see how incredible you are." The irony was devastating. Ryan had betrayed my business interests while believing he was expressing pride in my achievements, manipulated into thinking that sharing confidential information was an act of love rather than corporate espionage. "Did you know about Wilson Acquisition Group?" I asked. Ryan's confusion appeared genuine. "Who?" The response confirmed that Ashley had compartmentalized information effectively, keeping Ryan ignorant of the larger conspiracy while using him to gather intelligence. He'd been a perfect unwitting asset, motivated by emotional manipulation rather than financial incentives or ideological commitment. My phone rang with a call from David Kim, confirming that federal agents were ready to execute search warrants and make arrests related to Wilson's operation. The timing was perfect, allowing us to gather final evidence while the conspirators believed their operation remained undiscovered. "Ryan," I said quietly, "federal agents are going to arrest Ashley and several other people tonight for corporate espionage. You have two choices. You can cooperate with the investigation and help us understand the full scope of what happened, or you can try to protect her and face charges as an accomplice." The panic in his eyes was immediate and overwhelming. "Federal agents? Jessica, I had no idea this was anything illegal. Ashley told me she was just interested in your business because she wanted to understand what made you successful." "The FBI doesn't care about your intentions," I replied. "What matters is that you systematically gathered and transmitted confidential business information to people who were planning to use it for hostile acquisition purposes. That's corporate espionage." and it's a federal crime. Ryan spent the next hour providing detailed information about Ashley's intelligence requirements, her questions about specific aspects of my business, and the methods she'd used to gather information through their relationship. His cooperation was complete and apparently genuine, driven by terror about the legal consequences he was facing. The federal arrests began at midnight, with simultaneous raids in Austin, San Antonio, and Houston targeting Wilson's network of operatives and financial backers. Ashley was taken into custody at her downtown condo, along with sophisticated surveillance equipment and detailed files about multiple Austin businesses that had been targeted for acquisition. Wilson himself was arrested at his Dallas headquarters, where agents discovered comprehensive intelligence files about dozens of successful regional businesses and detailed plans for systematic acquisition campaigns. The scope of the operation was larger than anyone had imagined, involving millions of dollars in fraudulent acquisitions and hundreds of victims across multiple states. Ryan spent the night at a downtown hotel, afraid to return home and face the reality of what he'd done to our marriage and my business. I spent it reviewing damage assessments and planning recovery strategies for my agency, which had survived the attack but would require significant effort to rebuild client trust and internal security. The next morning brought news that Wilson's organization had been systematically targeting successful entrepreneurs across the Southwest, using personal infiltration and emotional manipulation to gather intelligence for hostile acquisitions. My case had provided the evidence federal authorities needed to expose the entire network. Ashley's confession revealed the sophisticated nature of her operation, including detailed psychological profiles of target couples and specific techniques for exploiting marital vulnerabilities. She'd been trained in corporate espionage and personal manipulation, with bonus structures tied to the success of acquisition campaigns. The financial damage to my agency was significant but manageable, requiring enhanced security measures and careful management of client relationships during the recovery period. Several major clients expressed increased confidence in our security practices after learning how we'd detected and exposed the espionage operation. Ryan's fate remained uncertain, dependent on his continued cooperation with federal investigators and the extent of the criminal charges filed against Wilson's organization. Our marriage was effectively over, destroyed by betrayal that went far beyond simple adultery to encompass systematic exploitation of our most intimate relationship. The house on Lake Austin became mine entirely, as did the agency I'd built and nearly lost to corporate espionage. Ryan moved back to Chicago to live with family while awaiting the resolution of federal charges, leaving behind the life we'd built together and the dreams we'd shared. Ashley Chen, whose real name turned out to be Ashley Williams Chen, received a federal sentence of 7 years for corporate espionage and conspiracy charges. Her operation had targeted more than 30 successful businesses across 5 states, destroying marriages and business partnerships while facilitating millions of dollars in fraudulent acquisitions. Wilson himself faced multiple federal charges that would likely result in decades in prison, along with civil lawsuits from victims seeking compensation for business losses and personal damages. His acquisition empire collapsed as federal authorities seized assets and froze accounts connected to the espionage operation. 6 months after the arrests, I stood in my renovated home office, now equipped with military-grade security systems and procedures that would prevent any future intelligence-gathering operations. The space had been transformed from a casual workspace into a secure environment where sensitive business information could be protected from any form of infiltration. The agency had not only survived Wilson's attack, but emerged stronger, with enhanced security protocols and a reputation for detecting and defeating sophisticated corporate espionage operations. Several new clients had specifically sought our services because of our demonstrated ability to protect confidential information under extreme circumstances. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but this time it wasn't a threat from someone claiming to have stolen my husband. It was a message from Maria, asking if I wanted to grab lunch and discuss our expansion plans for the coming year. The future stretched ahead with possibilities that no longer included the complications of a compromised marriage or the threat of corporate espionage. I'd discovered that betrayal, while devastating, could also be illuminating, revealing strengths and capabilities I'd never fully recognized. Ryan had texted me once from Chicago, a message apologizing for his role in the conspiracy and expressing regret about the destruction of our marriage. I'd read it without responding, recognizing that some betrayals create distances that can never be bridged, regardless of intentions or regret. Ashley's final message to me had come through federal prosecutors, a letter offering to provide additional information about Wilson's operations in exchange for consideration during sentencing. I'd declined to read it, having no interest in further communication with someone who'd systematically exploited personal relationships for criminal purposes. The wedding video that had started my counteroffensive against Ashley's manipulation now seemed like evidence from a different lifetime, documenting promises and commitments that had been systematically undermined by forces neither Ryan nor I had fully understood. The marriage it celebrated had been real, but it had also been vulnerable to exploitation in ways I'd never imagined. Standing in my secure office, looking out at the lake that reflected the afternoon sun in patterns of gold and silver, I realized that survival sometimes required letting go of everything you'd thought you wanted in order to protect what truly mattered. The business I'd built was stronger than ever, my personal independence was complete, and my future was no longer subject to manipulation by people who mistook kindness for weakness. The text message that had started this entire ordeal, Ashley's confident declaration that Ryan was hers now, had revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of what she was attempting to steal. Ryan had never been mine to lose, just as my business success had never been vulnerable to the kind of personal manipulation Wilson's organization specialized in. Some battles are won not by fighting harder but by understanding the real nature of what's being threatened and what's worth protecting. Ashley Chen had thought she was stealing a husband and gathering intelligence about a business. Instead, she'd awakened capabilities and revealed strengths that would serve me far better than the marriage and trust she'd destroyed. The afternoon sun set over Lake Austin as I closed my laptop and prepared to leave the office that had become both fortress and command center. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but they would be faced from a position of strength earned through surviving corporate espionage and personal betrayal. The morning after the federal arrests brought an unexpected visitor to my lakefront home. Special Agent Carmen Rodriguez from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division stood on my doorstep at 8 o'clock sharp, her professional demeanor carrying an undertone of excitement that suggested significant developments in the Wilson investigation. "Ms. Martinez," she began as I invited her into my living room, "your cooperation has been instrumental in exposing what we now believe is the largest corporate espionage network operating in the southwestern United States. We need to discuss some developments that could impact both your personal safety and your business operations." I poured coffee for both of us, noting how Agent Rodriguez's eyes swept the room with the trained observation skills of someone accustomed to gathering intelligence from environmental details. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows illuminated the space I'd reclaimed as entirely my own, free from the contamination of Ryan's betrayal and Ashley's manipulation. "What kind of developments?" I asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Wilson's organization is larger and more sophisticated than we initially realized," Rodriguez replied, opening a thick file folder. "The arrests in Austin, San Antonio, and Houston were just the beginning. We've identified operations in 12 states, involving over 200 businesses that were targeted for acquisition through personal infiltration. The scope was staggering, representing a criminal enterprise that had been systematically destroying marriages and business partnerships across multiple states while generating hundreds of millions in fraudulent profits. My case had apparently provided the breakthrough evidence that allowed federal authorities to understand the full extent of Wilson's network. "Your husband's cooperation has been particularly valuable," Rodriguez continued. "His detailed account of Ashley's manipulation techniques has helped us identify similar operations in other cities. We've been able to prevent at least 6 active acquisitions that were in progress." The irony wasn't lost on me that Ryan's betrayal, which had nearly destroyed everything I'd built, was now being used to protect other entrepreneurs from similar attacks. His documentation of Ashley's intelligence gathering had become evidence that would save other marriages and businesses from the same systematic exploitation. "There's something else," Rodriguez said, her expression becoming more serious. "We've discovered that Wilson's organization has been tracking you personally since the investigation became public. They consider you a significant threat to their operations, and we have evidence suggesting they're planning some form of retaliation." The coffee cup trembled slightly in my hands as I processed the implications. What kind of retaliation? Financial attacks, reputation destruction, possibly physical intimidation. Wilson's organization doesn't accept defeat gracefully, and they view entrepreneurs who successfully resist their operations as threats that need to be eliminated. Rodriguez opened her file and spread several photographs across my coffee table. Images of me leaving my office, entering my home, and meeting with clients had been taken with professional surveillance equipment over the past week. Someone had been watching my movements with the same systematic approach Ashley had used to gather intelligence about my business. We believe they're preparing a comprehensive campaign to destroy your reputation and business relationships, Rodriguez explained. The surveillance suggests they're gathering information for character assassination and competitive sabotage designed to drive you out of business permanently. The revelation that Wilson's organization was escalating their attack rather than retreating added a new dimension to the conflict. They weren't simply accepting defeat and moving on to easier targets. They were treating my successful resistance as a declaration of war that required comprehensive retaliation. What kind of protection can you provide? I asked, studying the surveillance photos that revealed how thoroughly my privacy had been invaded. Full federal protection for you personally, enhanced security for your business operations, and ongoing monitoring of Wilson's network to intercept any planned attacks, Rodriguez replied. But there's something else we'd like you to consider. She leaned forward, her expression indicating that she was about to propose something significant. We want you to serve as bait for a larger operation designed to capture Wilson's remaining operatives and dismantle their entire network permanently. The proposal was both terrifying and intriguing. Rodriguez explained that federal authorities had identified several active operations similar to mine, but they needed comprehensive evidence to prosecute the remaining members of Wilson's organization effectively. Your business profile and successful resistance make you an irresistible target for their operations, she continued. If we can convince them that you're vulnerable to a new form of attack, we might be able to draw out operatives we haven't identified yet. The plan would involve creating the appearance that my business was struggling with client defections and financial problems as a result of the espionage scandal. Federal agents would pose as potential acquisition partners, creating opportunities for Wilson's remaining operatives to reveal themselves through attempted infiltration. It would require complete cooperation and significant personal risk, Rodriguez acknowledged. But it could provide the evidence we need to ensure that Wilson's organization never targets another entrepreneur or destroys another marriage for corporate profit. I spent the next hour reviewing the detailed operation plan, considering the implications of deliberately making myself a target for an organization that had already demonstrated sophisticated capabilities for personal destruction. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential impact of permanently dismantling a network that had systematically destroyed hundreds of lives. My phone rang with a call from Maria, who was dealing with client concerns about the security of our business operations following news coverage of the federal arrests. Her voice carried stress that reflected the broader challenges facing my agency as we worked to rebuild trust and maintain relationships. 3 clients have requested meetings to discuss enhanced security protocols, Maria reported. They're not threatening to leave, but they want assurance that their confidential information is protected from any future espionage attempts. Schedule the meetings, I replied. Complete transparency about our security enhancements and the federal investigation. The clients need to understand that we're not victims who got lucky. We're professionals who detected and defeated a sophisticated attack. After ending the call, I realized that Rodriguez's proposal offered an opportunity to transform my agency's apparent vulnerability into a competitive advantage. If we could demonstrate our ability to detect and defeat corporate espionage in real time, we'd become the most secure digital marketing firm in Texas. I'll do it, I told Rodriguez, but I want complete control over how the operation affects my business relationships and employee safety. The next 3 weeks transformed my life into an elaborate counterintelligence operation designed to expose Wilson's remaining network while protecting other potential targets. Federal agents established surveillance positions around my home and office, monitoring for any signs of infiltration while maintaining the appearance of normal business operations. The manufactured crisis began with planted news stories, suggesting that several major clients were reconsidering their relationships with my agency following revelations about the security breach. The stories were carefully crafted to suggest financial vulnerability without completely destroying my business reputation. Within days, I began receiving contact from individuals who claimed to represent investment groups interested in providing emergency funding or strategic partnerships. The approaches were sophisticated and well-researched, suggesting access to detailed intelligence about my business operations and financial situation. Marcus Thompson, my IT security director, worked closely with federal technicians to monitor all electronic communications and identify any attempts to infiltrate our systems. The enhanced security protocols had transformed our offices into what essentially amounted to a secure government facility, with multiple layers of protection against both digital and physical intrusion. "We're seeing probing attempts on our network perimeter every few hours," Marcus reported during one of our daily security briefings. "Sophisticated stuff that suggests professional hackers working with detailed intelligence about our system architecture." The attacks were exactly what Rodriguez had predicted. Confirmation that Wilson's organization was attempting to exploit what they believed was a moment of vulnerability. Federal agents were documenting every attempt, building comprehensive evidence of ongoing criminal activity that would support additional prosecutions. Elena, my assistant, had been briefed on the operation and was helping to manage the carefully orchestrated appearance of business crisis while maintaining actual operational stability. Her professionalism under pressure had been remarkable, handling client concerns and media inquiries with perfect balance between transparency and discretion. Channel 7 wants an interview about corporate espionage in Austin's business community, Elena reported. "They're specifically interested in your perspective as someone who successfully detected and defeated an attack." The media interest was part of the federal strategy, designed to maintain public attention on corporate espionage while encouraging other potential operatives to reveal themselves through attempts to exploit the perceived opportunity. 2 weeks into the operation, the breakthrough came through an unexpected source. Ashley Chen, facing federal prison time for her role in Wilson's network, had agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for reduced sentencing. Her information revealed active operations targeting 6 other Austin businesses, including detailed intelligence about planned infiltration methods. She's provided comprehensive details about recruitment techniques, target selection criteria, and operational protocols, Rodriguez informed me during one of our secure briefings. More importantly, she's identified operatives we didn't know existed, including several who are currently active in ongoing operations. Ashley's cooperation had apparently been motivated by genuine remorse about the destruction her activities had caused, combined with fear about the prison sentence she was facing for federal espionage charges. Her detailed debriefing was providing federal authorities with unprecedented insight into the methods and scope of corporate espionage operations. "There's something else," Rodriguez continued. "Ashley specifically requested the opportunity to apologize to you personally for the damage she caused to your marriage and business. She claims to have information about Wilson's future plans that she'll only share with you directly." The request was both unexpected and emotionally complicated. Ashley had systematically destroyed my marriage while gathering intelligence to facilitate the hostile acquisition of my business, but her cooperation was now protecting other entrepreneurs from similar attacks. The meeting took place at a secure federal facility downtown, with Ashley appearing in orange prison clothing and restraints that emphasized how completely her situation had changed since our last indirect contact through threatening text messages. "I know nothing I say can undo what I did to your life," Ashley began, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need you to understand that I never intended for things to escalate the way they did." Her explanation revealed the psychological manipulation she'd experienced during recruitment by Wilson's organization. Facing bankruptcy and personal crisis, she'd been offered what seemed like legitimate employment conducting market research for investment firms. The assignment to develop a relationship with Ryan had been presented as routine background investigation for potential business partnerships. "They told me you were considering selling your agency and that Ryan was the key decision-maker in financial matters," Ashley continued. "Everything I did was supposedly helping facilitate a legitimate acquisition that would benefit everyone involved." The manipulation had been sophisticated, exploiting Ashley's financial desperation, while gradually escalating her involvement in activities that became increasingly questionable. By the time she understood the true nature of Wilson's operation, she was too deeply involved to withdraw without facing criminal liability. "Wilson's planning something called Phase 3, Ashley said, her voice taking on urgency. "It involves systematic destruction of entrepreneurs who've successfully resisted acquisition attempts. You're the primary target because your resistance exposed their entire operation." Phase 3 apparently involved comprehensive attacks on business relationships, personal reputation, and financial stability designed to force successful entrepreneurs into bankruptcy or complete social isolation. The goal was to demonstrate that resistance to Wilson's acquisitions resulted in total destruction. "They have detailed psychological profiles of you, your business partners, your major clients, and your family members," Ashley revealed. "The plan involves using personal information to create targeted attacks designed to destroy every important relationship in your life." The scope of the planned retaliation was both terrifying and infuriating, representing a level of vindictive destruction that went far beyond business competition into personal warfare. Wilson's organization had apparently decided that my successful resistance needed to be punished with such severity that other potential targets would surrender immediately rather than risk similar destruction. Ashley's information allowed federal authorities to intercept Phase 3 before it could be implemented, resulting in additional arrests and the seizure of detailed files containing planned attacks against dozens of entrepreneurs across multiple states. The evidence revealed a systematic campaign of personal destruction that would have ruined lives and careers nationwide. The final confrontation came 3 months after the initial arrests, when Wilson himself was brought to trial on federal charges that included corporate espionage, conspiracy, mail fraud, and racketeering. His organization's systematic destruction of marriages and businesses had finally been exposed in court proceedings that received national media attention. I testified about the impact of his organization's activities on my marriage, business, and personal life, describing how Ashley's manipulation had transformed my husband into an unwitting asset in a corporate espionage operation. The testimony was emotionally difficult but legally crucial, providing human context for the abstract charges of financial crime. Ryan also testified, describing in detail how Ashley had manipulated him into gathering intelligence while believing he was simply sharing information with someone who admired my professional success. His obvious remorse and cooperation had resulted in reduced charges, but our marriage remained permanently destroyed by the betrayal and manipulation. Wilson's conviction on all federal charges resulted in a 30-year prison sentence and the permanent dissolution of his acquisition network. Asset seizures provided compensation for victims of his operations, including substantial damages for the destruction of my marriage and the attempted acquisition of my business. The trial's conclusion marked the end of a chapter in my life that had begun with a threatening text message and evolved into a federal investigation that protected hundreds of entrepreneurs from corporate espionage. The woman who had claimed my husband was hers now faced 7 years in federal prison, while the man who had orchestrated the entire operation would spend the rest of his life behind bars. My agency emerged from the crisis stronger than ever, with enhanced security protocols and a reputation for detecting and defeating sophisticated corporate attacks. Several new clients specifically sought our services because of our demonstrated ability to protect confidential information under extreme circumstances. The house on Lake Austin became a sanctuary where I could rebuild my life without the complications of a compromised marriage or the threat of corporate espionage. The space that had been invaded and exploited was transformed into a secure environment where I could focus on growing my business and supporting other entrepreneurs. 6 months after Wilson's conviction, I received a final message related to the entire ordeal. Ryan had written from Chicago, where he was rebuilding his career while serving probation for his role in the espionage operation. The letter expressed genuine remorse for his actions and gratitude for my cooperation with federal authorities that had reduced his potential prison sentence. I read the letter once and then deleted it without responding, recognizing that some betrayals create distances that can never be bridged, regardless of intentions or subsequent cooperation. The marriage that had been destroyed by corporate espionage belonged to a different version of myself, someone who had trusted too easily and protected too little. The wedding video that had initiated my counteroffensive against Ashley's manipulation now seemed like evidence from another lifetime. documenting promises that had been systematically undermined by forces neither of us had understood. The dreams it celebrated had been real, but they had also been vulnerable to exploitation in ways I had never imagined. Standing in my renovated home office, looking out at the lake that reflected the afternoon sun in patterns of gold and silver, I understood that survival sometimes required letting go of everything you thought you wanted in order to protect what truly mattered. The business I had built was stronger than ever, my personal independence was complete, and my future was no longer subject to manipulation by people who mistook kindness for weakness. The text message that had started this entire ordeal, Ashley's confident declaration that Ryan was hers now, had revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of what she was attempting to steal. Ryan had never been mine to lose, just as my business success had never been vulnerable to the kind of personal manipulation Wilson's organization specialized in. My phone buzzed with a message from Maria, asking if I wanted to celebrate the conclusion of a major new client contract with dinner at our favorite restaurant downtown. The future stretched ahead with possibilities that no longer included the complications of betrayal or the threat of corporate espionage. Some battles are won not by fighting harder, but by understanding the real nature of what's being threatened and what's worth protecting. Ashley Chen had thought she was stealing a husband and gathering intelligence about a business. Instead, she had awakened capabilities and revealed strengths that would serve me far better than the marriage and trust she had destroyed. The afternoon sun set over Lake Austin as I closed my laptop and prepared to meet Maria for our celebration dinner. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but they would be faced from a position of strength earned through surviving corporate espionage and personal betrayal. The woman who had once threatened me with text messages about claiming my husband now occupied a federal prison cell, while the man who had orchestrated the entire conspiracy faced decades behind bars. The marriage they had targeted for destruction was indeed over, but the business they had tried to steal had emerged more successful than ever. 1 year after Wilson's conviction, I stood in the gleaming conference room of my expanded agency headquarters, addressing a room full of Austin's most successful entrepreneurs at the first annual Corporate Security Summit. The event had been my idea, born from the recognition that Wilson's organization had been just one example of the sophisticated threats facing modern businesses. Corporate espionage isn't just about stealing trade secrets anymore, I told the assembled business leaders. It's about weaponizing personal relationships, exploiting trust, and turning the people closest to you into unwitting assets for hostile organizations. The only defense is education, preparation, and the courage to act when you recognize the signs. The audience included CEOs, startup founders, and established business owners who had all heard about my experience through media coverage of Wilson's trial. Many had reached out privately to share their own stories of suspicious approaches, unusual questions from romantic partners, or concerning changes in trusted employees' behavior. Maria sat in the front row, beaming with pride at how far we'd come since that terrifying morning when we'd first discovered the extent of Ryan's betrayal. Our agency had tripled in size over the past year, driven largely by demand for our specialized security consulting services. We'd become the go-to firm for businesses that needed both digital marketing expertise and corporate espionage protection. The woman who targeted my marriage thought she was conducting a simple honey trap operation. I continued, clicking to a slide that showed the organizational chart of Wilson's dismantled network. What she didn't realize was that she was dealing with someone who understood the value of strategic thinking, thorough preparation, and decisive action when faced with threats. The presentation covered the warning signs that other entrepreneurs should watch for, from unusual romantic interest in business details to systematic questions about client relationships and financial projections. I developed a comprehensive checklist based on Ashley's manipulation techniques, designed to help business owners protect themselves from similar infiltration attempts. During the networking break, I was approached by Rebecca Martinez, no relation despite the shared surname, who owned a successful chain of Austin restaurants. Her story was depressingly familiar: a charming new boyfriend who seemed unusually interested in her supplier relationships and expansion plans, combined with recent approaches from investors offering acquisition deals at below-market valuations. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, Rebecca said, her voice tight with worry. But after hearing your presentation, I'm realizing that Marcus has been asking very specific questions about my business operations. Questions that seemed like normal relationship conversation but were actually pretty sophisticated intelligence gathering. I gave Rebecca the contact information for Agent Rodriguez, who had established a specialized unit within the FBI to investigate corporate espionage targeting small and medium-sized businesses. The unit had been created specifically in response to Wilson's case, recognizing that traditional law enforcement wasn't equipped to handle the psychological manipulation and personal infiltration that characterized modern corporate espionage. Trust your instincts, I advised her. If something feels wrong about the questions he's asking or the timing of these acquisition approaches, it probably is wrong. The cost of investigating is minimal compared to the cost of losing everything you've built. The summit concluded with the announcement of a new nonprofit organization I'd established, using part of the settlement money from Wilson's asset seizures. The Austin Business Protection Initiative would provide free security assessments and espionage awareness training to local entrepreneurs, particularly those who might not have the resources to protect themselves against sophisticated attacks. As the attendees filed out discussing enhanced security measures and information sharing protocols, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed since receiving Ashley's threatening text message. The woman who had once seemed like a simple homewrecker had actually been the catalyst for transforming me into someone far stronger and more capable than I'd ever imagined. My phone buzzed with a message from Elena, who was coordinating the logistics for next week's expansion into the Dallas market. Our success in Austin had attracted attention from businesses throughout Texas, leading to opportunities that would have been impossible before Wilson's attack had proven our security capabilities. Dallas Morning News wants an interview about corporate espionage trends, Elena's message read. They're particularly interested in your perspective on protecting small businesses from sophisticated attacks. Should I schedule it for next Friday? I confirmed the interview, recognizing that media attention had become a valuable tool for educating other entrepreneurs about threats they might not otherwise recognize. Every story about Wilson's operation potentially prevented another business owner from falling victim to similar manipulation. The drive home took me past the restaurant where Ashley had taken that photo of herself with Ryan, the image that had started this entire ordeal. The building now housed a different establishment, and I felt nothing but mild curiosity about the changes. The emotional charge of those memories had faded, replaced by pride in how I'd transformed a personal crisis into professional strength. At home, I found a package waiting on my doorstep from an unexpected source. The return address showed it was from Ashley Chen, sent from the federal correctional facility where she was serving her sentence. I considered throwing it away unopened, but curiosity eventually won out. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small wooden carving that appeared to be a rose, probably made in the prison's woodworking program. The letter was brief and to the point, written in careful handwriting that suggested multiple drafts. I know I have no right to contact you, and I understand if you don't read this, the letter began. I wanted you to know that I think about the damage I caused every day, and I'm using my time here to try to become someone who could never hurt another person the way I hurt you. I've been helping federal investigators understand how Wilson recruited people like me, and I hope that information prevents other families from being destroyed. The letter went on to describe Ashley's participation in the FBI's ongoing investigation into corporate espionage networks, providing insight into recruitment techniques and operational methods that were helping authorities identify and prevent similar operations. Her cooperation had apparently been genuine and comprehensive, contributing to multiple arrests and the protection of numerous potential victims. I know nothing I do can undo what happened to your marriage or repair the trust that was broken, the letter concluded. But I wanted you to know that your strength in exposing our operation has saved other families from going through what you experienced. The way you handled everything showed me what real strength looks like, and I'm trying to find some small version of that courage in myself. I set the letter aside and picked up the wooden rose, examining the careful craftsmanship that had gone into creating something beautiful from basic materials. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, though I doubted Ashley had intended the deeper meaning of transformation and growth that emerged from destruction. The evening news featured a story about the conviction of Wilson's final co-conspirator, bringing formal closure to the federal investigation that had started with my marriage's destruction. The reporter noted that Wilson's network had targeted over 300 businesses across 15 states, with total damages estimated at more than $500 million. The investigation began when Austin entrepreneur Jessica Martinez detected and exposed corporate espionage targeting her digital marketing agency, the reporter concluded. Her cooperation with federal authorities has resulted in the conviction of 43 individuals and the recovery of millions in stolen assets for victims of the scheme. I turned off the television and walked out onto my deck, looking across Lake Austin as the sun set behind the hills on the opposite shore. The house felt completely mine now, transformed from a showcase of married life into a sanctuary of independence and strength. My phone rang with a call from Maria, who was reviewing proposals for our new Dallas office space. "I found the perfect location," she said excitedly. "Top floor of a downtown high-rise, with incredible security features and room for 50 employees. The landlord is actually eager to have us as tenants because of our reputation for detecting corporate espionage." The irony was perfect. Wilson's attempt to destroy my business had instead made it more valuable and sought after than ever before. Ashley's manipulation of Ryan had revealed capabilities and strengths that were now driving expansion and success beyond anything I'd previously imagined. "Schedule a site visit for Monday," I told Maria, "and make sure our security team reviews all the building's access protocols. We're not taking any chances with our new expansion." As I ended the call, I realized that the threatening text message from Ashley had been the beginning of the best thing that had ever happened to my professional life. Her declaration that Ryan was hers now had forced me to discover who I really was when everything I'd thought I wanted was stripped away. The wedding video that had been my first weapon against Ashley's confidence now sat in a folder of evidence that had helped convict a criminal organization. The promises and dreams it documented belonged to a different person, someone who had needed the protection and validation of marriage to feel secure in her achievements. That person was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true security came from personal capability rather than shared relationships. The business that Ashley had tried to steal was now worth 10 times what it had been when she'd first targeted it, built on a foundation of demonstrated strength rather than vulnerable trust. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, meetings with potential clients who sought security as much as marketing expertise. The woman who had once threatened to take my husband had inadvertently given me something far more valuable: the knowledge of my own strength and the capability to protect not just myself, but an entire community of entrepreneurs. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.